Hi folks, and welcome back to Meaningful Money. I'm here at Pendine Lighthouse, same as in the last video, but with the camera turned around so you can actually see it this time. Quite a thing, pretty exposed spot here in West Cornwall, and a very windy day, hence the handheld microphone, which is really proving its worth today. Quick shout out to Ben Crockford of Animetric for lending me this to see how I get on with it. I think I'm going to buy one, Ben. Want to sell it? We're going to talk today about SIPPs, that's self-invested personal pensions. And do you remember when we were talking about stakeholder pensions? They were like the Tesco value, the cheap and cheerful of the pension world. Well, SIPPs are the Tesco finest. They're the top quality, top-end Rolls-Royce of the personal pensions world. The clue is in the name, self-invested personal pensions. With personal pensions and stakeholders, they are usually run by insurance companies, and the insurance company does everything. It administers the scheme, takes your money off you, claims the tax relief from the revenue, and usually run the investment funds as well. Well, with a SIPP, you are unbundling the pensions administration from the investment of your money. So, you've got two parties here. You've got the administrative, the SIPP firm, and then you've got the underlying investment. So dealing with the admin first, what a SIPP admin do, they would administer the tax relief importantly. So when you make a contribution and you want to claim the tax relief back from the revenue, they would do that for you. They liaise with whoever is running the investments for you, usually or very often many people, and coordinate valuations and things like that. They would also make sure that the investments you hold within your SIPP are legitimate and correct, because there are rules pertaining to such things. So the SIPP provider actually does all the admin and working with the revenue and all the investment providers to make sure that everything's running tickety-boo. Now the investments themselves, the underlying investments, can be pretty much anything. With these stakeholder and personal pensions, it's usually what we call insured funds. We've talked a lot about funds, and they are sort of off-the-shelf investment solutions. But with a SIPP, you can invest in pretty much anything. The main types, the main reason people would have a SIPP as opposed to just an ordinary personal pension are because they want access to largely two kinds of investment. One is called discretionary fund management, and that's where you get a third-party fund house to make day-to-day investment decisions on your behalf. And you can only get true access to a DFM, a discretionary fund manager, through a SIPP. You can get a sort of watered-down version through an insured pension, a personal pension, but if you want the real deal, then you're looking at a SIPP. It has to be done through a SIPP. But there's another reason why people might do a SIPP, and that is to invest in commercial property. Now, this is a biggie. Let's say I had a SIPP, and let's say I was lucky enough to have £250,000 in it. Well, maybe I saw an office block or an office building that I wanted to buy. Well, I could buy that with the money in my SIPP. The money goes to the person selling the office block. The office block then becomes the investment inside my pension. And if that office block has got tenants in it, then their rent gets paid to the pension and increases my pension fund. So SIPPs are useful for investing in commercial property. And the reason most people have them is commercial property and discretionary fund management. But actually, SIPPs can invest in pretty much anything. But there is a set of investments called taxable property, which theoretically a pension can invest in, a SIPP can invest in, but in reality the taxation of those makes them a bad idea. So for instance, residential property is a big one. There was moves a couple of years ago that residential property might be able to be held inside a SIPP in future, but that was sort of pulled back from. But also what we call tangible and movable property. So that's things you can touch and move. So things like cars, fine art, yachts, wine collections, maybe rare stamp collections. These can theoretically be held inside a pension because they're all just investments. They can go up or down in value. But these tangible and movable things, along with residential property, are so punitively taxed that it's not worth usually holding them inside a pension. So who has a SIPP? You know, why not? Why do this? Usually people who have SIPPs have big pension funds, at least 50 grand, but usually 3, 4, 5 times that. So, you know, that's a relatively small percentage of people. One quite useful thing, an ability of a SIPP though, is the ability for the pension fund to borrow. Let's say, let's make the figures easy. Let's say I've got £200,000 in my pension fund, and I want to buy an office building which is £300,000. Well, I'm obviously 100 grand short, but I can borrow that. I can take a mortgage out. My pension fund can take a mortgage out to buy that office building. The limits are 50% of the fund size. So if I've got 200,000 in my pension, I can borrow another 100 grand. But that gives me a total of 300,000 to buy my pension. But my pension now has a mortgage on it. So those are the main reasons people would have them. Commercial property is the big one, discretionary fund management, but essentially they're the same things, but you just unbundle the pensions admin from the investment itself, and the investment choices are very, very wide. So that's basically it for SIPPs. Next time we're going to move, in fact no I'm not, I'm going to take just a very brief excursion before I talk about company pensions. I'm going to talk about something which is a hot topic right now and which is coming up in a couple of years' time, something called auto-enrollment, which means that if you're an employee and fulfill another couple of criteria, you're going to be made to take out a pension, or at least you're going to be given one automatically and you're going to have to opt out. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and goodbye from Pendeen Lighthouse.